Ho banned my black niece from the pool for her braids. My senator changed the dress code. Plucker Part 1. You never forget the moment a child learns she's been labeled less than, especially when it happens in front of you and you're powerless to stop it. It was a Tuesday in July. Heat shimmered off the pavement. The community pool glistened behind black iron gates, already crowded with kids splashing, screaming, laughing like it was their job. And just a few feet from that joy stood my 10-year-old niece, Ava, still, silent, goggles dangling from her fingers, towel in one hand, hair braided neat and long, beads at the ends catching sunlight. And directly in front of her, blocking the gate with a plastic badge clipped to her chest, was her Karen. Her real name was Margaret Delaney, but no one called her that. She'd earned the name Karen a dozen times over since she declared herself the pool compliance director of the Summer Grove Homeowners Association. No one had elected her. No one even wanted her there. But that hadn't stopped her from posting printed rules on the pool gate every week, with new highlights and added clauses scribbled in red pen. This week's rule: all hairstyles must be clean, natural, and free of added extensions or adornments for hygiene compliance. Ava looked up at her, confused. I washed my hair yesterday. Karen didn't even blink. Braids are classified as non-compliant. That's an external hair extension. But these are my braids. My aunt did them. I've had them since school ended. Doesn't matter, Karen snapped. They're not allowed. You'll have to leave. I stood behind Ava, stunned. We just walked 5 blocks in the heat to get here. She'd been talking about this pool trip all week, and now she was being turned away because of her hair. Is this a joke? I asked. Karen turned to me. Her smile was thin, tight. Rules are rules. No, discrimination is discrimination. You're welcome to come back when she's had them taken out, she said, already turning her back. I could feel Ava's hand tighten around mine, her small fingers, so warm, now shaking. I knelt beside her. You didn't do anything wrong, I whispered. She nodded, lips pressed shut. But I saw it in her eyes. That quiet storm of confusion and humiliation. That shame kids don't have words for yet. That heartbreak adults never quite recover from. And I knew this wasn't ending at the gate. My name is Jordan Reynolds. I'm a high school English teacher, a volunteer at the local community garden, and the legal guardian of my niece since my sister passed 2 years ago. Ava is everything to me. She is sunshine wrapped in resilience, smart, curious, loud in the best ways. She reads fantasy novels before bed and dreams about marine biology. Her favorite color is sky blue, and she's proud of her braids partly because I learned to do them myself watching YouTube tutorials, and partly because they make her feel like her mom. And today, someone decided that was unacceptable. We walked home that afternoon in silence. When we got inside, Ava didn't run to the fridge or drop her towel or ask for a popsicle like she usually did. She went to the bathroom. 10 minutes later, I found her in front of the mirror, trying to cut the beads off with a pair of child-safe scissors. Ava stopped. She turned, startled, eyes brimming. If I take them off, can I go tomorrow? My chest tightened. I knelt beside her again. No, baby. You don't have to change a single thing about you. She's the one who's wrong. Then why did everyone else get to swim? I didn't have an answer that felt good. So I picked up my phone and did the one thing that felt right. I called my aunt, Senator Naomi Reynolds. Aunt Naomi was no stranger to this kind of fight. She'd served 3 terms in the state legislature, led campaigns on education equity, and once filibustered an HOA-backed housing bill for 11 hours straight because it lacked tenant protections. But to me, she was just Aunt Nay. When she picked up, I didn't even say hello. She told Ava her braids weren't hygienic and made her leave the pool. There was silence. Then what HOA Summer Grove? Karen's at it again. She posted a new rule. Send me a photo of the sign, she said. 5 minutes later, she texted back, this is going public. I'll be there in the morning. And she was, the next day, at 9:02 a.m. She pulled up in a sleek black sedan with state plates and walked toward the pool gate wearing a linen suit and heels sharp enough to draw blood. Karen was already there, of course, clipboard in hand. She looked up and froze when she saw who was coming. I stood nearby with Ava, unsure what would happen. Naomi didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. "Ms. Delaney," she said, holding up the photo of the posted sign. "This rule violates 3 state codes and 2 civil rights protections under the Crown Act." "Did you write this?" Karen blinked. I was enforcing appearance standards. For safety. Hair is not a health hazard," Naomi said coldly. "Your language is coded, your enforcement selective, and your authority non-existent. I'm submitting a formal complaint today." Karen glanced toward the HOA board member who had just arrived and looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. "I didn't mean you don't get to mean," Naomi interrupted. "You get to resign or face a civil rights investigation. Your choice." Karen didn't respond. She turned and walked away. Ava swam that day. She wasn't alone. Naomi stayed. So did I. And as Ava jumped into the deep end, braids flying behind her like ribbons of victory, other parents clapped. One mom leaned over to me. "Thank you." I shook my head. "No. Thank her." And I pointed to Ava. But this wasn't over. Naomi called a press conference that week. She drafted an emergency amendment to our state's HOA oversight policy, specifically banning dress code policies that regulate natural hairstyles, and she named it the Ava Amendment, because if they were going to come for our children, we were going to write them into law. Part 2. 2 days after Ava swam past Karen's gate, a photo of her mid-jump, hair flying, smile blazing, went viral. It was taken by Ms. Patel, a photographer who lived 2 streets over. She'd been dropping off her daughter and snapped the shot without thinking. By evening, it was on the front page of the local news. By morning, it was on the Today Show. "Girl banned from pool over braids, swims free, thanks to aunt who's a state senator." And with that headline, the story became bigger than our block. At school, Ava became a bit of a celebrity. Her classmates hugged her. Teachers posted about her bravery. She even got invited to speak on a student panel about identity and self-respect. She said one sentence that stayed with me: "If my hair was a problem, maybe it's because someone didn't see me, they only saw what scared them." I watched her say it in front of a full auditorium, braids still fresh, beads clicking as she turned her head confidently. I thought about what it meant for a 10-year-old to speak the truth like that, and I knew this wasn't going to fade away like some feel-good headline. Because what happened at that pool was just one example. It was part of something wider, deeper. And Naomi was going to do what she always did with injustice: write it out of existence. The Ava Amendment was introduced into committee the following week. Its language was clear, sharp, and unflinching. No community association, HOA, or private residential management group may impose regulations or restrictions upon pool access, facilities, or activities that discriminate based on cultural hair practices, including but not limited to braids, locks, twists, bantu knots, or protective styles historically associated with racial or ethnic identity. But it didn't stop there. The amendment also required all HOA regulations regarding appearance and access to be reviewed and reapproved through legal counsel annually. Public posting of anti-discrimination standards in all communal recreational facilities. Creation of a hotline for reporting race-based HOA harassment with expedited review procedures. Naomi stood before the press with Ava's photo behind her. She said, "My niece was told she couldn't swim because her hair didn't fit someone else's rules. But her curls aren't the problem. The problem is the system that lets bias hide behind bylaws." We are done being polite about racism in khakis and clipboards. The backlash came fast and ugly. Karen's defenders started showing up online, accusing Naomi of grandstanding, of turning everything into race. Some claimed Ava had misunderstood. Others insisted the rule wasn't about race, it was about safety. We weren't surprised. When power gets challenged, it never goes down quietly. But this time, it wasn't just Karen's voice echoing in an empty HOA meeting. Now there were hundreds speaking back. A black mom in Tennessee posted, "My son was told his dreadlocks would clog the pool filter. I wasn't brave enough to fight it then. Thank you for fighting now." An Asian American dad from Oregon wrote, "My daughter was pulled aside for her buns, looking like rubber floats. We were humiliated. This story gave us courage to file a complaint." The stories poured in, and Naomi read every single one. Then she added a new clause to the amendment. In recognition of systemic bias across the country, this bill shall serve as a national model, available for immediate replication in other states. Back in Summer Grove, things changed quickly. Karen resigned from her pool compliance role under pressure from the HOA board, who was now trying desperately to save face. The rules she printed were pulled down. A new sign was installed at the gate. It read, "Everyone is welcome. All hair is beautiful. Discrimination will not be tolerated." Naomi invited the HOA board to a listening session. At first, only 2 showed up. But by the end of the week, 7 did, including board president Henry Langston, a quiet, aging man who admitted that Karen kind of bullied the rest of us into silence. I didn't let him off the hook. Silence isn't neutral. I told him, "It's complicity." He nodded. "I know, and I'm sorry. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start." Then came the hearing. The AVA amendment passed committee narrowly. Naomi stood before the Senate floor, a copy of the amendment in one hand, and Ava's drawing now famous in the other. She said, "You may think this is about a pool, about rules, but it's not. It's about the freedom of a little girl to exist without being punished for being herself. And if that makes you uncomfortable, maybe your comfort was built on someone else's exclusion." The room was silent. Then the vote came. The AVA amendment passed 28-12. When we got the news, I picked up Ava early from school. We went to the park, sat under the big willow tree, and I told her, "You just changed the law, kiddo." She blinked. "For real, for real?" She looked down, touched the beads at the end of her braid, and smiled. "Cool," she said. "Can we get ice cream?" We did. 2 scoops each. The amendment went into effect statewide the next month. It was the first law of its kind in the country, a blueprint. And soon, other states began drafting similar bills. They called it the Crown Model, inspired by Ava and Naomi, and every kid whose hair had been deemed too much for a pool or classroom or picture day. Karen, she faded from public view. Rumor had it she moved to a different city. No one kept in touch. But the damage she did, it became the reason for repair. That fall, Ava was invited to speak at her school board's equity night. She stood on stage with 2 other kids, all of them in their favorite outfits, hair done how they loved it most. And she said, "Your rules shouldn't erase who I am, because when I look in the mirror, I see my mom, and when I swim, I feel free. So please let us be." They gave her a standing ovation. Part 3. By the time the leaves began to fall in Summer Grove, you could feel that something had shifted. The neighborhood that once tensed at every Karen-initiated compliance sweep was now humming with life. Porch swings creaked with conversation. Kids zipped down sidewalks on scooters. And at the heart of it all stood a 10-year-old girl with beads in her braids, flipping off a diving board like the pool belonged to her, which, in a way, it finally did. Because Ava had changed the law, but the real miracle, she had changed people. When the Ava Amendment was signed into law, it didn't just end the discrimination in our local HOA. It rippled into other communities far beyond ours. By mid-September, HOAs across the state had to publicly post updated grooming policies that explicitly allowed natural and protective hairstyles. Fines, suspensions, and safety warnings were re-reviewed. Entire handbooks were rewritten. And the hotline that Naomi's office set up for race-based HOA abuse, over 2,000 calls in the first month, half of them came from people who had never reported the harassment they'd endured because they'd believed no one would care. Now they knew better. Naomi, for her part, didn't stop at the state line. She worked with senators in 3 other states to introduce mirror legislation. The AVA Amendment became Crown National, a coalition for fair community living standards rooted in equity, dignity, and cultural awareness. HOA lobbyists pushed back, of course, claimed it was too restrictive, that it would handcuff local authority. But Naomi, cool as ever, delivered one line that shut it down on live TV. If your authority only works by erasing who people are, maybe it's not authority. Maybe it's bigotry. Boom. Viral. Back at home, Ava was growing into something more than just a symbol. She joined her school's debate team. She started tutoring younger students in reading. She even launched a style and story project where classmates could write poems about their hair, their identity, their family. At the final showcase, she read her own "My Hair Is Not Tangled. It's a Map," twisting like the rivers where my ancestors bathed, beaded like the songs they carried. My crown is history, and it's mine. The auditorium went silent. Then came thunderous applause. I sat in the back row, eyes wet, heart full. If my sister could have seen her daughter now. One day in October, Ava came home with a flyer. "Look," she said, "they're hosting a youth rights summit. I want to speak." The summit was 3 weeks away, state-sponsored, attendees from all over. "You nervous?" I asked. "Not really." She shrugged. "I already know what I'm going to say." She spent days writing her speech, scrawling on notepads, voice recording lines, reading them aloud to our dog, Peanut. I tried not to hover, but every time I passed her room, I heard lines that sent chills down my spine. Sometimes the biggest walls are invisible, and sometimes a gate doesn't have to be locked to keep you out. The day of the summit, she wore a white shirt that read, "Let her swim," the same words that had been chalked on the sidewalk after that first day at the pool. She took the stage like she owned it, confident, calm, unshaken. I didn't want to be an activist. She began, "I just wanted to go swimming, but someone thought my braids made me dangerous. So now I talk, now I write, now I help other kids tell their stories. Because we don't need new rules to fit into. We need new rules to fit us." She got another standing ovation, and a photo of her speech arms lifted. Braids flying became the cover image for a children's civil rights textbook. Back in Summer Grove, change kept coming. The HOA board was restructured. Term limits were added. A community equity committee co-chaired by parents, kids, and seniors was formed. One of its first initiatives, a heritage garden planted at the old clubhouse lawn. Every plant came with a plaque. Cornrows and cotton, a tribute to resistance. Twists and tendrils, a celebration of growth. Braids and blossoms, a message of legacy. At the grand opening, Ava stood beside Naomi as they unveiled the final plaque. To every child told they didn't belong, "You do, and this place remembers you." Karen. She never returned. We heard she moved to Florida. She tried to join another HOA. That board Googled her and said, "No thanks." One Saturday evening, as fall gave way to winter, Ava and I sat on the porch, watching the streetlights flicker on. "Do you ever think about that day?" I asked. She nodded. "Yeah, but not like before." "Do you wish it hadn't happened?" She thought a moment. "I wish people weren't like that, but I'm kind of glad I saw it." "Why?" "Because now I know how to fight back." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and now other kids do too. Later that night, I found an envelope on my doorstep. Inside was a typed note. No signature. I was on the board. I stayed quiet when I should have spoken. "I'm sorry. Thank you for not giving up. Thank Ava for showing us who we could be." I folded it carefully, because even anonymous courage is still courage. Part 4. Most laws are written by adults. Most change is too slow for kids to see. But every now and then, someone young, someone who just wanted to swim, shakes the foundation. Ava didn't set out to make history. She just wanted to feel water on her skin, to laugh without shame, to exist without apology. And now, her name is in textbooks. The spring after the Ava Amendment passed, we were invited to Washington, D.C. Naomi had been asked to testify before a federal panel about HOA reform, and the committee specifically requested Ava's presence too. They said her story had galvanized a generational reckoning, I said she could skip it if she wanted to. Ava looked at me and asked, "Do I get to say whatever I want?" I nodded. She packed her favorite sky blue dress, the same beads we bought after that terrible day at the pool, and a folder of drawings and poems she'd written. The Capitol Rotunda was bigger than anything she'd ever seen. Cameras everywhere, security buzzing, staffers rushing, but Ava walked through it like she owned the place. Before her testimony, Naomi whispered in her ear. I didn't hear what she said, but Ava smiled and nodded. Then she stepped up to the mic. She began without notes. When I was 10, I wasn't allowed to go swimming because of my braids. They said they weren't clean, or natural, or safe, but my hair was fine. The rules were broken. Not me. She paused, then looked each senator in the eye. I didn't want to fight. I wanted to swim. But if rules are hurting kids, they shouldn't be rules anymore. And if you're not going to fix it, someone else will. The entire chamber stilled. Naomi later told me it was one of the few times she'd ever seen a congressional room go that quiet. Ava finished with a line that's now painted in community centers across the country. If my hair keeps you from seeing me, maybe you're the one who needs to change. They gave her a standing ovation. Even the aides clapped. And that moment, it turned into legislation. Within 6 months, the National Community Equality Standard Act was passed through both houses of Congress. It didn't just expand protections under the Crown Act. It mandated a national HOA accountability registry, a federal hotline for bias reporting, training for HOA boards in anti-discrimination, reviewed annually, a legal resource pool for families wrongly targeted by private neighborhood rules, and the centerpiece, Section 5B, the AVA clause. No individual shall be denied access to shared amenities, resources, or facilities based on natural, cultural, or protective hairstyles, including but not limited to braids, locks, twists, or extensions at any level of housing governance. Back home, the ripple continued. Summer Grove wasn't just proud of Ava. It was different now. Kids walked taller, parents spoke louder. The HOA charter was revised for the third time in a year, this time with Ava in the room as a youth representative. She helped rewrite the pool rules herself. They were shorter, clearer, kinder. Rule number 1, all children are welcome. Rule number 2, no hairstyle shall be restricted. Rule number 3, any question about someone's worth is out of bounds. They painted those rules on the inside of the gate, in every language spoken on our block. That summer, we hosted the first Unity Swim Festival. People from 5 neighboring towns came. Hair in every style, skin in every shade. No one was turned away. There were music tents, poetry readings, braiding workshops, and in the middle of it all, Ava. Not on a stage, not giving a speech, just swimming, laughing, free. Late that afternoon, Naomi and I stood by the diving board, watching Ava splash around with her new friends. She's different now, I said. Naomi smiled. She was always this brave. The world just finally made space for it. You ever think of stepping back? I asked. I already have, she replied. The next generation's not waiting anymore. In the fall, Ava started 6th grade at a new school. She was asked to join the student council, and she said yes on one condition. She got to lead a new initiative, Voices First. It was simple, powerful. 1 hour a week where kids could share their stories anonymously or out loud, and the council would work on solutions with them. I just don't want anyone else to feel like they don't belong, she told me. And if they already do, she grinned, then I'll make them feel even more seen. The media stopped calling after a while, but the change kept coming. Books were written. A documentary aired. A mural was painted on the side of the state capitol building. At the center, a girl mid-dive, braids arcing behind her like wings. One evening, I found Ava on the porch. She was drawing again. What is it this time? I asked. She turned the paper around. It was the gate, the same pool gate from a year ago. Only now, it was open, covered in wildflowers. Kids walking through, hand in hand. At the top, she'd written "Welcome Home." I didn't say anything, just kissed the top of her head. And thank the universe for the day we walked to that pool. Even if it broke us for a minute, it built something bigger. It started with a rule, a gate, a braid. But it became a revolution. Because the moment we stop asking children to shrink and start reshaping the world to fit them, that's when justice begins. That's when braids become banners, when pools become platforms, when little girls become legislators in the making. And that's when no one, ever again, gets to say you don't belong here. Because she does. And she rewrote the rules to prove it. The end.